We otakus and weebs are a passionate people. I mean, how else could we sit through 720 episodes of Naruto, 804 episodes of Dragon Ball, or 1,054 episodes of One Piece? And counting. But even though we are some of the most dedicated people when it comes to our fandoms, a lot of us have no clue where to begin when it comes to our own personal passions and dreams. And that's where I come in. Hey there, my name is Tiffany, and I'd like to welcome you to the Elevated Otaku Podcast, where we talk about how to improve your life, nurture your relationships, and how to enact Operation Strix. But in today's admittedly very delayed episode, we're talking about passion. You know, the thing that everyone is born with, that inherent driving force that breathes life into all of us and gives our time on this planet purpose and meaning. The thing that we all possess and should come as natural as breathing, right? All right, full disclosure, I don't even believe that myself. The truth is, finding a passion is less of a clear-cut route and more of whatever route Zoro takes to get wherever the hell he ends up. It's full of twists, turns, and dead ends. But the beautiful part about the journey is that meandering path that you travel is all part of the process. Every misstep and every U-turn brings you a little bit closer to your destination. And if One Piece has taught us anything in 1,054 episodes, it's that the journey can be just as fun as the destination. But you probably didn't come here for all that mushy-gushy bullshit. Maybe you came here because you're looking for a roadmap to help you find yourself. Or maybe you have a ton of interests and you need to find a way to narrow them down. Maybe you just came here for the anime recommendations. Or maybe you really are like Zoro and you also got lost on the way to somewhere else and ended up with me. Lucky you. Either way, keep listening for the 5 steps to discover your passion and my 5 anime recommendations to help you fuel your fire during your search. Strap in, because this episode is a juicy one. But first, you know what time it is. It's time for the question of the day. So let's spin the wheel of listener-submitted questions and see what we get. And today's question comes from Mr. HBCU Anime. He asks, what's an anime that you would want to live in based only on the fashion choices? Okay, I know what the correct answer should be. It's the show where every single character's drip is bright, flashy, and over the top. From the protagonists to the villains, everyone in the show is fly as hell, if not a little ridiculous. But I am so sorry, JoJo's fans. Today is not your day. Because it's actually the bright and flashy fits that put me off of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Although I would rock the hell out of Jotaro's hat. Not only that, but I would also love a custom Jujutsu High uniform or a personalized Demon Slayer yukata. But the anime that I chose is solely based on one person, and that is Miss Nana Osaki from the anime Nana. Yeah, it may not be the most ridiculous or over the top, but I love a good punk rock grunge look. My wardrobe already has a few outfits that I purchased specifically with Miss Nana in mind. And don't let me find those big old leather boots in my size. What about you? If fashion was the only deciding factor, would you want to be dropped in the Bleach world? Sailor Moon? Or maybe you want to go full cosplay and pick My Dress Up Darling. Go to the Elevated Otaku Twitter page and tell me what you would choose. And while you're down there, drop a couple pics of your favorite fits. All right, now let's jump into the episode. Like I've said a few times already, today we're talking about passion. More specifically, how to find your passion. Also, if you haven't already, you should take this time to subscribe or follow the podcast because in a future episode, we'll be talking about how to take those newly discovered passions and make them profitable. And like always, I'm going to pair up each one of these steps with an anime recommendation for shows about characters who are on their own journey of self-discovery to inspire you while you're on yours. And if that's still not enough for you content-hungry weebs, you can spice up this episode even more by taking a shot every time you hear me say the word passion. Just kidding, just kidding. Do not do that unless your name is Dazai and you have a death wish. Hell, I've only been talking for like 5 minutes and I think I've already said it like 20 times. Anyway, I'd like to kick off our episode with a little exercise. Tell me if you can relate to any of these thoughts or feelings. You don't believe that you've discovered your passion yet. You have no earthly idea of where to even begin in finding your passion. You have a metaphorical and possibly literal closet full of discarded attempts at finding the one thing that'll fulfill you. You feel like you're running out or have already run out of time to find or pursue your passion. You worry that you're behind the curve and everyone around you is finding themselves while you're still searching. You feel like what you thought was your passion doesn't quite fit anymore. You worry that you may not even have a passion or a purpose at all. If any of these statements hit a little too close to home for you, then first let me give you a verbal hug because I have definitely been there before. And I know how much it sucks to feel like a wild Walmart bag blowing in the wind with no purpose or direction. Like, damn, can I at least level up to be a classy Target bag instead? It took me years of trial and error, failed dreams, and aimless wandering to realize that finding your passion is a lifelong journey that'll happen on its own time. And no matter how much society tries to make you think that a passion or a purpose is something that you're totally aware of from the moment your little baby brain enters the chat, the truth is, you're probably going to try out several things before something actually fits. True, there are some people that are lucky enough to know from an early age that they were born to be a painter or an acrobat or the number one pro hero. But that's the exception, not the rule. For example, at various points in my life, I thought that I was going to be a veterinarian or a lounge singer or an assassin or a psychologist or a nightclub owner or a professional martial artist or perform in the Disney orchestra and a bunch of other things that never happened. Well, all but one of them never happened. I'll let you guys guess which one that is. But now, after dipping my toe into several hobbies and ideas, I have a way better understanding of my calling and of myself. And after a bit of soul searching, you too can be the classy Target bag you've always aspired to be. So, let's ease into a fairly dense subject with a recommendation for a more exciting anime about self-discovery. My Hero Academia. Okay, I'll admit this one is pretty low-hanging fruit since the majority of us are well aware of this show and are currently on the edge of our seats watching the fabric of that animeverse get torn apart. But I'm still going to include this one because it also coincides with the first step that I'll give you in a bit. For those of you who somehow have never heard of this show, I'll give you the MHA elevator pitch. Ahem. My Hero Academia is a show where 80% of the human population are gifted with superpowers called quirks. Obviously, where there's power, there are also people who want to abuse that power. So, to combat the villains in this world, a hero association was established, as well as a school to teach superpowered youngins how to hone their skills and become pro heroes. Our main character, Izuku Midoriya, is one of the unlucky few who did not receive a quirk. Despite that, he grew up idolizing the number one pro hero and hopes to be just like him one day. Obviously, Midoriya's passion and determination to pursue what he feels is his purpose in life is reason enough to put this show on today's recommendation list. But the reason why MHA is first in our lineup is because of how Midoriya learns to work with and adapt to his newfound powers. Oh, spoiler alert, he ends up with powers. Yes, he always had an idea of who and what he wanted to be, but he found out that the way to become that person was going to take a lot of trial and error and a lot of self-discovery. Now, one of the main complaints I've heard about this show is that Midoriya was just handed a ridiculously OP quirk simply because he was the chosen one. But I don't think it's that simple. When you're first introduced to Midoriya, you see a kid trying to navigate a world filled with people who have extraordinary powers, while he has none. You meet a kid who wants nothing more than to be a beacon of hope and justice, to save lives, to inspire people. But he's told time and time again that there's nothing inspirational about him. But instead of just giving up and watching from the sidelines while his peers and his idols live out his dream, he decides to take a more scholarly approach. He studies. He studies the pros, he studies his classmates, he studies the villains, he studies himself. He analyzes fighting styles, quirk utilizations, and the strengths and weaknesses of both the heroes and the villains around him. And he takes pages and pages of notes. And after a while, he's collected so much data that he's able to replicate some of the things that he studied without even having a quirk to lean on in the first place. And he's done so much self-reflection and introspection that his resolve to become a pro hero just gets stronger, not weaker. It's because of this that the number one pro hero picks him to gift such a powerful quirk. But even after receiving said quirk, life doesn't get easier for Midoriya. No. In fact, it actually gets a lot harder. Imagine living your life as a regular person and on a random Thursday afternoon, someone gifts you with the superpowers of Superman. It's going to be a lot to adjust to, right? And this is where I don't think people give Midoriya enough credit. After all of that time spent studying others, now it's time for him to explore his own capabilities and limitations so that he doesn't waste such a powerful gift. Throughout the show, he's constantly learning how to adapt and work around issues that his peers, who have always been gifted, never had to deal with. He trades his blood, sweat, and tears. So many tears. In addition to constantly exploring himself and his newfound abilities for a real shot at becoming the future number one hero. And more importantly, following a passion that he never gave up on despite not quite knowing how to achieve it. And this brings us to the first step in discovering your passion, getting to know yourself. So, who are you? No, not your name, your job title, or your major, or what type of bender you'd be. I myself am definitely a firebender. Who are you really? To find your passion, you have to understand what you value, what your strengths and weaknesses are, what brings you joy and what makes you sad, and so many other nuanced parts of your personality. Just like Midoriya, you have to look inward if you're ever going to have a chance to become who you want to be. Another reason why it's so important to truly know yourself is because so many of us are carrying the weight of these preconceived notions of who we think we should be or what we think we should want out of life. And I know that we're not the only ones who struggle with this, but I think us otakus and weebs are keenly familiar with this feeling after always having to justify our love of our fandoms to people who just don't understand, actively misunderstand, or just think we should be doing something more productive with our time. Maybe you've been told that your dreams were unrealistic or irresponsible, or maybe you felt like your family and friends wouldn't approve or understand. Maybe the people you love have tried to steer you in a direction that they think is better for you, even though your heart knows you're not into it. We have to be able to break away from what we or other people think we're supposed to do in order to find out what we really want to do. So if you've never taken the time to root around in your own head, then this exercise is for you. Grab a piece of paper and try answering the questions I'm about to give you. Feel free to pause and rewind as much as you need to. And if a question leads you down an interesting or intriguing train of thought, follow it, because one-word answers just won't cut it here. I need you to channel your inner Izuku Midoriya and be as detailed as you can. Lord knows how many notebooks that kid has gone through. And don't worry if you're driving or working out, because I'll leave a link to all of these exercises in the show notes or the episode description if you want to work on them later. And if you're listening to this in or after May of 2023, you can go to our website and find all of today's exercises there too. Tiffany Senpai's got you covered. All right, here we go. What's your favorite part of your personality? What parts of your personality would you like to improve? What do you think other people admire about you? What are the 3 most important things to you, tangible and or abstract? What is your biggest source of pride? What is your biggest insecurity or fear? What percentage of your day do you spend smiling, laughing, or feeling happy? What are you doing during those times? What makes you feel sad, stressed out, or angry? What is your favorite hobby? What do you enjoy most about that hobby? What things do you struggle with? What things do you excel at? All right, how did it go? If you were really honest with yourself, then your answers could point you in the right direction to discovering your passion, or even shine some light on things that you may be doing or feeling or thinking that could be blocking you from finding your passion. I did this exercise too, and if you nosy nerds out there want to take a peek, I'll also include those in the description. And I noticed that one of my major hurdles is my tendency to put too much pressure on myself. Passions flourish when you cultivate and nurture them with love and patience, not stress and strict expectations. But we'll talk more about that later. Another great way to get to know yourself is to take an online personality test. No, not one of those weird BuzzFeed, what does your favorite potato say about you types of tests. Reputable tests like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram tests actually do a really good job of measuring a person's preferences, their strengths and weaknesses, and help to quantify how they perceive the world. I'll include links to those tests too and share my results if any of you are curious. Now, you know you can't have a list about passion without a sports anime. But because there are so many good ones to choose from, I figured that I'd just recommend my favorite. So the number 2 spot for our anime recommendation goes to Haiku. This show is about a middle school student named Shoyo Hinata who falls in love with the idea of playing volleyball. But there are 2 very big, no pun intended, problems with this. 1, he's a teeny tiny little guy, and volleyball is very much considered to be a tall person's sport. And 2, he doesn't actually have a team to play with. But he doesn't let either of those things deter him, especially not after seeing his idol, the small giant, take the court and prove to him that short kings can be great too. So Hinata manages to scrape a team together and actually make it to the championships, where they immediately get their butts kicked. And that's how the show ends. Thanks for listening, everyone. Be sure to like, share, and follow the podcast and tune in for our next episode because, of course, that's not how it ends. You can't keep a short king down. Hinata vows to get better and beat the cocky elite star player of the other team that knocked them out of the competition. Cut to his first year of high school, where he tries out for the volleyball team at Kurasano High and runs into none other than the cocky bastard who spiked his dreams, Tobio Kageyama. And let's just say it's on sight for both of them when they meet. But because they both dream of excelling at a sport that they eat, sleep, and breathe, they have to learn to overcome their shortcomings, no pun intended, and rise to the occasion. Okay, maybe that one was on purpose. Originally, I only started this anime because I needed a dubbed show to watch in the background while I packed up my apartment to move. But this show is so fast-paced, cerebral, and exciting that before I realized what was happening, I was sitting in my living room floor, surrounded by forgotten moving boxes, and flying through episode after episode. If you're looking for a show about people who give their all to their passion, Haiku will not disappoint you. Step number 2 in finding your passion: head to the drawing board. If you're starting from scratch and truly have no idea what you want to pursue, The next step in your journey should be to make a list of anything and everything that interests you. Write down as many hobbies and activities that you can think of that currently or have ever tickled your fancy. Leave no stone unturned because nothing is too small or trivial. Once had dreams of being a bullfighter? Write it down. Wondered how it would be to be a deep sea fisherman? List it. Once thought it would be cool to own a guinea pig ranch? Um, that's a little weird, bro. But write it down anyway. Don't worry about whether you have experience in these things already, or if you're good at them or bad at them, or if you think they'll be lucrative. Just add them to the list. Remember, passions aren't always something to be uncovered or discovered. Passions can also be developed based on things that already interest you. If you need help coming up with ideas, then Google is your friend. Just search a list of hobbies and write down the ones that you wouldn't mind trying out. You can also ask your friends and family what they think you'd be good at, or you can even think back to things that interested you when you were a kid. And if you're still needing some examples, I'll share my list with you. Singing, writing fantasy novels, giving advice, anime, reading, orchestra, dogs, creating music, writing lyrics in nature parks, kayaking, traveling, animals, martial arts, guitar, piano, music and concerts, comic books, cycling, hiking, weapons training, wine, whiskey, stand-up comedy, cosplay, drawing, and voice acting. Whew. Okay, I know some of those sound ridiculous, but even the ridiculous ones can lead you down a rabbit hole of ideas. For instance, on the surface, drinking wine may sound more like a cry for help than a passion. But for a moment, I was contemplating being a sommelier. You know, the snooty people that fancy restaurants hire to select which wines they add to the menu and guide guests on which pairing goes best with what food. But I threw that out pretty quickly because I remembered how much I hated working in the service industry. Ugh. Just try to be open-minded with your list because sometimes all it takes to uncover a passion is just a little creativity. The third anime recommendation that I have for you is called
I want to pursue music with you. I was thinking that same thing.
Carol and Tuesday. All right, picture this. The year is approximately 2071, and humans have successfully colonized Mars thanks to the advancement of AI technology. Unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, things like art and music are also primarily created via AI. Obviously, that could never happen in real life, though. But let's just try to suspend our disbelief a bit, shall we? Anyway, even in a world ruled by AI, there are still a few true musicians out there. Cue our main characters. Carol is a 17-year-old orphan who works random part-time jobs by day to make ends meet to afford her shabby lifestyle in the Alba City metropolis. By night, though, she plays her keyboard on the boardwalk for anyone who will listen. One evening, while doing her nightly performance, her beautiful playing and singing draw in Tuesday, another young musician who recently ran away from her affluent home because her parents forbid her from pursuing her dreams. Because apparently being a musician wasn't a fitting hobby for a prominent politician's daughter. Oh, snooty, snooty, snooty. The pair end up bonding and decide to create a song together. Unbeknownst to them, this song gets recorded and leaked on social media, which sparks a whirlwind of highs and lows as the two attempt to navigate the music industry and follow their dreams. The show itself is pretty good, not to mention beautifully animated, but I'd say that it would probably resonate more for you musicians out there. You get to join two girls who have no support or knowledge of the industry as they learn the ropes in real time and try to make a name for themselves in a world that isn't built for them or their sound. They're surrounded by people who keep telling them that they don't belong, keep telling them that they're too inexperienced, keep telling them to quit. Not to mention that Tuesday is simultaneously earning more notoriety while trying to stay hidden from her family. I think the core message of this anime is that your dreams can take you to places that you never imagined, regardless of your circumstances, as long as you are brave enough to chase them. In Carol's case, it's a matter of where there's a will, there's a way. In Tuesday's case, it's a matter of ignoring the haters and the naysayers and continuing on with what you feel is truly right for you. I know I'm a little biased on this one since my dreams are heavily rooted in music, but even if you aren't a musician, I think that this show conveys a great message. And hell, at the end of the day, you still get to enjoy a really good soundtrack. Fun fact, Carol and Tuesday, Cowboy Bebop, my all-time favorite anime, and Space Dandy all take place in the same universe. I don't really have a follow-up to that. I just thought it was interesting. Moving on. Step number 3 in finding your passion. Get out there and try your list. Now that you've got a working list of interests, it's time to dive into it. But it's important to focus on one activity at a time so that you can give each one a fair shot. So pick the one that excites you the most first and work your way down the list. This is supposed to be a fun way to explore your interests, so don't take it too seriously. Just enjoy the process. With that being said, there are a few things that you should keep in mind, though. Number 1, just because you aren't good at an activity right away doesn't mean this can't be your passion. Yes, I'm talking to you, my fellow perfectionists. Not being good at something right away doesn't mean you suck and you should throw all your dreams in the trash and just become a courtesan in the entertainment district. Unless that is your dream, to which I say, go get 'em, tiger. Rah. It just means that you're new and you need to practice. I personally tend to get so frustrated in the beginning stages of a new hobby or a project that I end up squeezing all of the enjoyment and inspiration out of it until all that I'm left with is the lifeless husk of a fruitless endeavor. So, yeah, don't do that. It's unrealistic to think you'll be perfect at something you just started. So try to reframe the experience so that you enjoy the learning process just as much as the accomplishments. Luckily, if you pick an activity that you truly enjoy, the practice should be just as fulfilling in and of itself. Number 2, you have to be willing to give it time. Listen, there's a reason why companies give you a free trial. It's so you can get a feel for the product, come to a reasonable and informed opinion, and decide whether or not you want to add that product into your life. And they're also hoping that you forget about canceling so that they can fly under the radar and charge you until the end of time. The same goes for the passion trial period. Well, except for that last part. Make sure that you give yourself enough time to actually get a feel for each activity before you move on to the next. Set a time frame or a quota that you have to meet before you can move on to the next project. For example, take this podcast. Even though I'm fairly familiar with recording techniques and performing from my days of being a musician, this is new territory for me. And even though I'm really enjoying it, there are still a lot of growing pains and hiccups. As I'm sure you can tell by the fact that this episode was supposed to come out over 2 weeks ago. But like I said, we have to give ourselves grace when we're learning. And included in that grace comes time. This year, I have 2 goals. One is to get my podcast off the ground, and the second is to write and record an album. Instead of trying to tackle both of these things at once, or cramming in a bunch of other goals and running the risk of burning out or tainting the learning experience, I'm dedicating the first 6 months of the year to learning the ins and outs of podcasting, and the last 6 months of the year will be dedicated to my music. So, if you're on your journey to find your passion, I'd suggest setting a time frame or a quota that you have to meet before you can move on to the next project. Of course, it doesn't have to be that long. You can give yourself a month of dance lessons or 5 fully finished paintings or whatever it is that makes the most sense. You just want to make sure that you get a real feel for if it's actually what you want to do, as well as giving yourself time to build up your skills. Number 3, set yourself up for success. You know that meme of the dude who's got one foot at the base of a staircase and is reaching up like 7 steps with his other foot so he can bypass all the steps in between? Yeah, don't do that either. If you're going to start a brand new hobby, be sure to ease your way into it. For example, if you wanted to be an animator and you are starting from scratch, Don't try to produce a full 24-episode anime with 20 different characters in a completely fabricated fictional universe. You don't work for MAPPA, so you can relax a bit. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I am saying that it's better to start with a smaller project or an animated short to get your beak wet and build up a little bit of confidence first. You'll have plenty of time to tackle those grandiose projects that you have knocking around in your head, so just try to avoid the frustration of struggling through a steep learning curve and potentially discouraging yourself so much that you end up quitting altogether. Start slow and work your way up. Number 4, keep an open mind, but also trust your gut. This one is pretty simple. Yes, you should absolutely give each of your interests a valid chance, but you should also trust yourself if you feel like it just ain't hitting the way you thought it would. If you get to the end of your trial period and you realize that you hated every minute of it, then there is no shame in crossing that idea off of the list and moving on to the next one. Don't spend too much time trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I cannot tell you how much time I have spent trying to turn something into a passion when all it was meant to be was a stepping stone in the right direction. Now, if you're anything like me, you may be thinking, well, why would I want to waste my time on completing a trial period for something I don't like? Well, let's talk more about that later in step 4. By the way, guys, if you're getting any value from this at all, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone who may also benefit from it. I don't know if you know this, but it's a really weird type of lonely to sit in an empty room talking to strangers who may or may not actually be there. So feel free to reach out to me on my socials and let me know if you're enjoying all of my unsolicited advice, or if there's a topic or segment that you would like to see on the show. Okay, back to the episode. Our number 4 anime recommendation is simultaneously incredibly inspirational and one of the saddest and most gut-wrenching shows I've ever seen in my life. Ladies and gentlemen,
What part of my kid's doing? Don't you understand?
I don't want to hear it, quitter! Be my accompanist already!
Your Lie in April. Yes, this one is another music-related anime, but my God, is it a good one. So this one follows a boy named Kosei, a piano prodigy, and was well known in the classical music circuit and was constantly winning awards for his playing, both because of his talent and because he had a very strict mother. Think Joe Jackson. He was never good enough. He was never precise enough. He would never measure up to her expectations. Well, sadly, Kosai's mother eventually dies from an illness, and the guilt that he feels from not being good enough for her to want to stick around causes him not to be able to play the piano anymore. Like, he literally cannot hear the notes that the instrument makes at all. Until he meets a violinist named Kiori. She's wild and reckless with her playing. Where Kosai is rigid, Kiori is fluid. Kosai only played exactly what was on the sheet music, while Kiori played the music in the style of however it made her feel in that moment. She was untethered and free, and she wanted Kosai to be her accompaniment for a competition, which meant that he was going to have to work through his trauma and rediscover his love for the piano. But this time, he could pursue it out of passion instead of obligation. I chose this show, A, because it holds an incredibly special place in my heart and actually saved me from a time where I almost lost my love of music myself, and B, because it is an amazing example of how an old passion can be reframed and rediscovered. Remember how I said that your passion may be something that you tried and locked away or gave up on? Well, it is never too late to pick it back up, in one way or another. Sometimes those old passions can be dusted off and you can throw yourself back into them like you never even left. Kind of like riding a bike. But sometimes we need a little push or a little creativity to get around the reasons why we dropped those interests in the first place. Maybe you're an ex-athlete who injured yourself in a game. Well, if that was your passion, you don't have to give it up. You can pass on all of the knowledge that you have by coaching. If you were a painter, but you lost the ability to paint for one reason or another, you could become an art curator. Okay, I'm getting a little off topic from the show. Your lie in April will break your heart and then sew it back together and then rip it apart again. It's beautifully animated. The music is gorgeous. Kiori just radiates best girl vibes, and the show will leave you with an urgent desire to follow your dreams. I mean, it is my second favorite anime of all time for a reason. The fourth step in finding your passion is to take the leap. Okay, so now you've worked your way through your list and you've discovered some hobbies or projects that you really enjoy and some that you really didn't. Well, congratulations, because that means that you are 2 steps closer to your goal. Why 2? Let me explain. Starting with the projects that may not have been your favorite. Just like math, a subject for which I will never feel any passion, exploration is cumulative. Every experience that you allow yourself to have and every new skill that you pick up along the way carries over into the next thing that you try. For example, before I started this podcast, I tried my hand at voice acting. Well, specifically audiobook narrating. I had all of the tech, all of the tools, and all of the tenacity to succeed. And even though I was teaching myself from scratch, I caught on really fast and I genuinely really loved it. All except for the editing. Just a little peek behind the curtain for all of you audiobook lovers out there. For every finished hour of an audiobook that you hear, it takes an average of 4 to 6 hours to edit that audio. And I hated every single hour of it. Like the way Kyo hates leaks, like the way Mineta hates consent, like the way Octagawa hates winning fights. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It was killing me from the inside out. But even though 48 hours of editing per audiobook would eventually be the death of my narrating career, the skills that I painstakingly acquired there transferred over to my podcast and have cut my learning curve in half. And while a diverse range of experiences does help you to find shortcuts, they also help you to add a little of your own special flavor to whatever it is you choose to pursue. If you're actually seeing your passion trials through to the end, you'll have a roadmap of experience and skills that nobody else can say that they have. No one else has followed the route that you took to get where you end up. So nobody can replicate your unique and flashy style. Lord Tengen would be proud. Now, if you've done everything I've listed above and you did manage to find some interests that tickle your pickle, then it's time to take the leap and choose the right one for you. But how exactly do we decide? Well, you're in luck because there's a pretty clear indicator for when you found the right passion. You feel passionate about it. We just mentioned the parts of the passion trial that you may have hated, the ones that were hard to get through, the ones that left you counting the days until you could move on to the next project. Obviously, we're not looking for those. What we are looking for are the ones that made you feel energized and engaged, the ones that sparked a fire somewhere deep inside of you, the ones that, when you were finished with them for the day, you were already looking forward to coming back to them. That, my friends, is passion. And if you're lucky, you may have found one or maybe even more activities or hobbies that fit that description. But even if you didn't, don't feel bad. Just go back to step number 2 and take another swing at some new hobbies. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Now, don't limit yourself into thinking that the fire that you feel has to be as scorching as Dobby's Inferno for it to be a passion. Even embers can be stoked into flames. All you need is a genuine spark. The rest is something that you can build on. So when you're narrowing down your options, just ask yourself, during this process, which activities made you lose track of time? Which hobbies made you get lost in your own world? Made you forget to eat? I remember the very first time that I got on stage to sing. I was at an after-hours jam session at a coffee shop in Arizona with my best friend. He didn't know I sang, and I didn't know I wanted to. So the thought never really even crossed my mind. Instead, we lugged his trombone and my viola into a courtyard filled with a sea of other musicians with guitars, drums, tambourines, and one random dude with a didgeridoo for some reason. Anyway, we had a great night just riffing with everyone. And as the coffee shop started to shut down and pack up, my friend dared me to go on stage and sing into the microphone that hadn't been put away yet. It took him and a couple other people poking fun at me to get me on stage, but when I finally did and I started to sing, it was like someone lit my body on fire and the smoky haze blotted out everything and everyone else around me. I found a home that I didn't even know that I'd been searching for. Of course, there would be some major ups and downs along that path, but that's a story for another time. Like I said, your aha moment doesn't have to be that grandiose, but it should make you feel fulfilled, eager to stick with it, or like your soul has finally come home. Just keep exploring until you find that pickle tickle. Like I once read in a Dove candy bar wrapper, your journey isn't over until you're happy. On to our fifth anime recommendation.
Hurry up! We always said we'd leave on the perfect night, didn't we?
Kiki's Delivery Service. Fun fact about this one. This was actually my very first exposure to anime. I saw it when I was but a wee lass, but it made a big impression on me. I think the message was lost on me back then, but now I can definitely see more of the value in this old gem. So, what's it about? Kiki's Delivery Service is about a young witch who's sent to a small seaside town to spend a year alone in training. Because she's on her own, well, except for her talking cat familiar Gigi, it's all on her to find a home, take care of her own supplies and food, and find a way to afford the aforementioned home supplies and food. So like the clever little witch she is, she gets a job as a delivery girl at a bakery, and she uses her magic broom to make her daily deliveries. While doing so, she meets and befriends a boy named Tombo, who is obsessed with the idea of flight and is trying to build a flying machine of his own. As the movie goes on, Kiki experiences setback after setback that make her start to question her skills as a witch. And as her self-doubt and depression become more difficult to ignore, she discovers that she's beginning to lose her ability to fly. I won't spoil the movie, but I will say that this is a fantastic story about overcoming insecurity and believing in yourself. We all have times in our lives where we don't feel confident that we're moving forward or improving, or that what we're doing is even what we're supposed to be doing in the first place. Call it writer's block, being in a funk, having your confidence rattled, or just call it being a little lost. It's a feeling that can throw you all the way off your game and leave you questioning yourself. But this anime shows you that failure is kind of inevitable sometimes. And that's perfectly okay, as long as you know how to recover from it and grow. Also, it's a Miyazaki film, so you know it's gorgeous. The last step in Project Passion is to avoid comparing yourself to others. Congratulations! You have come a long way. You've learned important things about yourself, and you've narrowed down your list to one or maybe even a few things that you truly feel passionate about. Seriously, I am genuinely really proud of you, you determined little nerd you. Now it's time to dive headfirst into what you love. But before you do, the best piece of advice that I can give you is to strap on some blinders first. Comparison is the thief of joy, and if you let yourself get caught up in a cycle of weighing your achievements or progress against someone else's, you run the risk of second-guessing yourself so much that you end up slowing down that progress or giving up altogether. And how much of a waste would that be after you've already come this far? Now, I can admit that this tip is the one that I struggle with the very most. I have let the weight of comparison drag me down like I was in the hyperbolic time chamber. It's something that I have always struggled with, but it was never worse than when I was a musician. I know I keep bringing up the musician thing a lot. I'm sorry, guys. That's my passion. Hopefully it's not getting annoying. Anyway, I had gotten a late start, but I was busting my ass to make up for lost time. And honestly, in hindsight, I was killing it. Within 6 months of realizing I wanted to sing professionally, I had found a music producer, I had written my first original song, and I started gigging. But I was looking at other artists who were younger than me and so much further along than I was, and it tore my confidence apart. Granted, I didn't know when they started, what they had been through to get there, or the route that they'd taken to achieve their level of success. All I saw was someone who was better than me, and that caused me to fall into a funk so bad that I almost quit. Just be careful and try not to become your own worst enemy, which I know is going to be hard because when you find something that you're really passionate about, you want to immerse yourself in it. You want to study the greats. You want to dive into the medium and follow people who make it look so easy. And I totally encourage that. Seeing people doing the thing that you really love really well is inspiring, as long as you don't let it cause you to doubt yourself. A wise man with a fierce cat eye once said,
If you are feeling disheartened, that you are somehow not enough, set your heart ablaze.
when I start to feel like I'm not good enough or like someone is better than me, I think back to the episode of Fruits Basket when Kyo was angry about always being in Yuki's shadow. It's the scene where Toru is in the kitchen struggling to make rice balls, and Kyo storms in complaining about how much everyone loves that damn rat. As she fumbles with the rice ball in her hand, she tries to comfort Kyo, but you know my boy is having none of that. He just keeps screaming and yelling while he absentmindedly takes the rice ball from her and forms it into the perfect shape. When he hands it back, Toru looks at him in amazement and tells him how impressed she is with his rice ball skills. He, of course, thinks she's being dumb and downplays her compliment, saying it's nothing. Nothing like what the overachiever Yuki can do. Then he turns his back on her and continues to sulk. He's giving big Bakugo energy. But as his back is turned to her, she stares at him and then drops this absolute banger. And I quote, "Maybe the reason you don't see it is because it's stuck to your back." He turns around and he looks at her crazy because of course he does. What the hell sense does that make? So she continues. She says, "What I mean is a person's admirable qualities. They're just like, say, a pickled plum on a rice ball. In other words, the person is the rice ball and the plum stuck to their back." At this point, my boy is completely lost. So this angel on earth proceeds to tell him, "So all over the world, you could have rice balls made from all sorts of wonderful ingredients, all different flavors and shapes and colors. But since they'd be stuck in the middle of everyone's back, someone could have a plum and not even know it. They'd look at themselves and think, I'm so plain, nothing but white rice, even though it isn't true. Because turn them around and sure enough, there it is. There's a plum. Yep, I can see it. I can see it very clearly, Kyo. You don't know it, but you have a great big plum on your back. Yuki is admirable in his way, and you're admirable in yours." What I'm saying is, before you get yourself down by thinking that you don't stack up to your peers, just take a step back and remember that the goal isn't to be better than them. It's to be the best version of yourself. Just keep working hard at improving every day. And remember that you have a plum stuck to your back. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, as late as it was coming out. And if you managed to make it this far, first off, let me say thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to little old me. My passion is helping people. And if any of you got anything from this, or if you want to share what part of your passion journey you're on, or if you just want to share the anime that you saw that lit a fire in your heart, you can find me at Elevated X Otaku on Instagram and Twitter. And if you've made it this far, I have a final bonus tip for you to help in your passion search. Step number 5.5. Play by your own rules. I know I've been using the phrase finding your passion, but the truth is that you could have more than one. And not only could you have multiple passions, they aren't set in stone. As we grow and evolve, so do our interests and our passions. So never feel guilty about growing out of something you used to enjoy, and never fight yourself on pursuing something that you find surprisingly intriguing. And most of all, remember that passion and purpose are a human need. Sure, it's not on the same level as eating and breathing, but your soul needs fulfillment to thrive. Don't let finances, self-doubt, or other people keep you from your call to adventure. There are workarounds for every hurdle. And if you stick with me, we can navigate this journey together. You know, power of friendship and all that. See you next time.